All right, well, let's beef up the show with a modern wrestling review. This past week's Dynamite, the AEW television program on Wednesday night, they loaded this thing up. The number 4 of the best of 7 fiasco, the long-awaited match with MJF and Starks. That's the first time we've seen MJF on free television plying his craft in a bit. We kind of said this a couple of weeks ago. Previously, every best of 7 match has been in the main event position or later in the show. And we said, when do you think these brain surgeons are going to figure this out, that the most watched part of the program is going to be the first segment, because they've still got the Big Bang Theory's viewers, and a years-old sitcom repeat draws more viewers than the wrestling program does in prime time. But when are they going to figure this out and put themselves on first? And that's exactly what they did. This time, straight out of the gate. Well, the first thing you saw was the masked moron. That's the first voice you hear and the first thing you see sitting at that desk, and it makes this thing look like a fan cam pretend TV show where the guys in the neighborhood said, hey, let's do a wrestling program. But nevertheless, they started out with the Bermuda Triangle versus the Buckaroos. And all I could think of, the Briscoes and FTR have the 3 best tag team matches of the entire year in every promotion in the world. And we get this 7 times on national television. So if you've seen one of these, you've seen them all. Did you watch it? Did they do anything different than they normally do?
I think they kind of did. You're going to go nuts, or you're not going to like this, but I think this was the best of their matches in this series so far, and they did something different. While doing one of their nonsensical flips, Nick Jackson...
He hurts his ankle,
disappears for the match, and the crowd is dead silent. They don't know how to react. Are we still supposed to cheer all the fantastic flips? Or should we be concerned that this guy who flips just hurt his foot? We don't know. And then he came back. So I at least like there was a story in the match.
And proved that he didn't hurt the ankle. And then they hit the ankle with the hammer.
But in the middle of the match, I think it was in the middle of the match. And if I'm wrong on this, it was in the middle of a different match. But I think it may have been in the middle of this match. But one of the commentators said, well, Tony Khan has just decided match 5 will have this stipulation, and then match 6 will have this stipulation, and if we go to match 7, it will have this stipulation.
No, that was later on in the show.
Oh, okay.
That was not during this match. No, later. You're jumping ahead, but I don't blame you for not remembering, because we've already kind of stooged it. Basically, since the Bermuda Triangle uses the hammer again and hits Balding Buck in his bad ankle and they beat him, then Kenny Olivier decides to emote on the microphone, and he gets the microphone at 20 minutes of this match, by the way. So the first 20 minutes, then the match is over. Everybody stands around forever. The heels start to leave the ring. It looks like they're confused on who needs to do what first when. And then Kenny says, he gets the microphone and he says, what are you wearing? No, really. He uses the phone sex voice, but he challenges, and I use that word in quotation marks, the heels, I guess they're the heels, in the softest, most blasé, uninteresting, emotionless way possible. He's not mad. He's not even upset. He's wandering around doing the nerd voice that he does. And he challenges them to a no DQ match next week, where not only the hammer will be legal, but all weapons are going to be legal. Because we're tired of playing your guys' game. A no DQ match, as opposed to what they've been doing, where they've used the hammer in every match and nobody's gotten disqualified. There have been no repercussions. Nobody ever gets disqualified. Even if they have a match where there are supposed to be disqualifications in play and they do all this shit. So, and it's not going to be any different because the corpse referee is going to be involved.
I was going to say, announce no Rick Knox as referee. The fans will think something will really happen.
Yeah, then they'll pop. But then after he did that and the heels just stood there and stared at him like everybody else did, then later on in the program, that's when they say, oh, and the sixth match, if we need that, it's going to be a ladder match. And the seventh match is going to be the fucking nuclear waste and suppositories and see whose piss turns fluorescent green first match. And they just gave the people a whole bunch of other fucking crazy off-the-wall stipulations on all the other, if they're needed. I kind of bet you they will be needed, but
there's a lot needed.
There's a lot needed, but the point is, if you like these matches, they had another one. When fucking Twinkle Toes gets on the micro, and at the end of his promo, he blew the fans a kiss. Mwah! He's death on the microphone.
He is really bad on the mic.
There is nobody more boring, more not exciting, more bleh. And he talks like that in real life too, because there's nobody in real life that's more boring and bleh than this fucking guy. But they did it. They put themselves on first to get the big bangers. And then when they run the viewers off later on in the program, they can blame MJF. So we called that one too. And speaking of which, they followed it up with Bar Brady in the back with MJF. And he follows the worst nerd-playing wrestler promo of the week with a scorching backstage pre-tape. And I've give it to him that he didn't have a live interview because he's going to have a match live in the ring. Don't have two entrances and don't fucking put them together. But this was great because he can talk. And as soon as the only bad thing about it was Marvez, because Marvez is usually the worst thing of anything he's in because he's so fucking horrible. And I don't know why somebody doesn't. No, seriously. It's not that he's a bad human being. He doesn't need to be doing this. He's not camera friendly. He can't speak. He can't make this sound like anything other than a prearranged, memorized, contrived question that he rattles off with no emotion at the top of his head. He doesn't need to be speaking on television. That doesn't mean he needs to die or go to a gulag somewhere, but that somebody hasn't put him out of our misery and told him, no, Alex, you're not a television personality. Go back to sports writing. It's just not fair to any of us, including him.
Hey, Alex, we're paying Renee all this money to make Moxley happy. Can we let her do these?
Yes, just anything. But anyway, as soon as he spoke, then they closed in on MJF close-up, 2 minutes, scorched Starks, verbal masterpiece. MJF could out-talk this roster if all he used was sign language. But anyway, then, and the crowd was hot. This crowd was a hot crowd until they fucking threw buckets of water on them. But here comes the Acclaimed. And the people go crazy. They love these kids. And here comes Caster. And he's like, yo, Acclaimed in the house if you need a reminder. We brought the belts back like Brittany Griner. All the fans agree on us. Other teams getting booed like they're Elon Musk. And this is great. And then he keeps, and then suddenly Lethal and Sanjay and Jeff Jarrett and Zippy the Giant Pinhead attack him from behind in the entranceway and beat shit out of him, break guitar over Caster's head, and leave him laying in the ring and cut a promo on him.
Did you hear those boos?
Yes, and they weren't really... They weren't encouraging boos. They were like, boo, you fucking assholes. We wanted to hear this guy and we don't want to see this shit.
Yeah, those weren't the right kind of boos.
And again, there's ways to, for one thing, who's the goddamn tag team in this group of 4 people? You got a manager, you got 2 single wrestlers, and a goddamn freak of nature. And they gave The EVP's 25, almost 30 minutes for that presentation they did, but they couldn't let the Acclaimed beat 2 guys in 3 minutes and then get the shit kicked out of them. But it's constant over and over. People come out, get jumped, get left laying. People have a match and then still get jumped and left laying. It doesn't work anymore. It's every segment.
The Acclaimed winning a match here against 2 job guys, hate to use the word, in a couple of minutes would have helped the Jericho story even more later. That had happened earlier in the show.
Yes, and as well, it would have given them something and given the people a chance to see a minute of them before you fucking, if you have to kick the shit out of them with people that, where is Bennett and Taven, a tag team? I mean, I've given up on seeing FTR on this fucking program, except in brief excerpted clips from other less viewed sources. Anyway, speaking of Jericho, Tony was in the back with the appreciators. And Jericho's pissed he lost Claudio, and he's going to take his frustrations out on a jobber later today. And he tells Garcia to shadow Sammy to learn how not to lose. Are they going to do so? Jay Uso and Sami Zayn over here now?
No, they're going to do Daniel and Sammy, not Jay and Sammy.
They're setting up the same thing where Garcia's just turned and joined the group, but now he's going to be pissed at Sammy, and Jericho's telling Garcia to listen to Sammy so Sammy can tell him how to. Oh boy! So they're borrowing here, and it's clear when you see these guys standing there that it's a group of stooges, including Hager in the back with his stupid hat, and he's the shits and just a lost cause now. After 3 years, we've seen apparently everything he can fucking do, and that's nothing. But it's a group of stooges to make Jericho look like the fucking... Right now, he's Leo Gorcey in the fucking latter stages of the East Side Kids. You know he's somebody, but the rest of them are new, and you don't really know who the fuck they are.
So who's Hunts Hall in this scenario?
I think it has to be Hager, just because he's been there next to longest.
Hager's the Hunt? All right.
Hager's Hunts Hall. So then we get Brian Cage against Jungle Boy Jack Perry. And even when they try to do shit, you've got to remember that unless a human being has a personality, it don't work. Jungle Boy took a choke slam on the apron of the ring, on his neck, on the on the VTR. So he comes out selling his bad neck, but he doesn't sell his bad neck like a feisty baby face who's going to fucking fight through against this big beast regardless. He sells his neck like a kid on the playground who just got dumped on his head and had his peanut butter sandwich stolen. He just had kind of a off-put look on his face, and he's rubbing his neck, and he's kind of walking slow. None of these guys have a goddamn shit bit of personality. If they can't fucking text somebody or play a video game, they're dead in the fucking water. I'm serious. I used to share locker rooms with some of the most outlandish motherfuckers in the history of the human race. And that's why they got over on television. These guys are bland, boring, and they're pussies. They're just big fucking pussies. And all they want to do is fucking flip around and cartwheel like a bunch of male high school cheerleaders. So anyway, this was 2 indie guys doing an indie match with no leader, and Brian Cage trying to do 10,000 different moves, whether he can do them or not. And finally, in the finish, explain this to me. I know they want to get Jungle Boy over, but the finishes are so flat, and they're so... He comes out of something Cage is trying to do and hits a Canadian Destroyer. Which, okay, it's a stupid move, but it looked great. He gets a 2 count with a sloppy kick out. He could have had it there. Resourceful, quick babyface reverses something 1, 2, 3. But no, that's a kick out. Then he gets the snare trap, which is his modified crossface. Prince Nana, the manager, jumps up on the apron, distracts the referee. Cage, the heel, is tapping out, but the referee can't see it. Okay, we've seen that spot many times in wrestling before, not applied in this context. They do And Jungle Boy gets up and tries to go get the fucking referee, and they do a little awkward slow motion do-si-do thing that was contrived and set up so that Cage could swing at Jungle Boy, miss, and nail Nana off the apron. And then Jungle Boy hit a sloppy roll-up 1, 2, 3. So he hit Cage with a finish that looked better than anything else he did in what I just said, but that was a 2 count. Then he gets the fucking submission hold, and the heel taps out behind the referee's back, but instead of that being the babyface's out to get beat, the babyface just gets up, foils the heel and his manager again, and then beats the fucking heel flat in the fucking middle with a sloppy fucking move that looked worse than the other 2 things. How the fuck? Who's putting this shit together?
Tony Khan.
Are there no prisons, no workhouses? See, I'm in a Christmas mood. Are there no producers, no coaches? Can nobody say, well, wait a minute, you don't do all those things together. Those are things that happen in wrestling, but you don't do them in that order altogether. Because then you've just...
Well, there's a camp that doesn't like advice and thinks that they know best and just do what they think is best, and these may or may not be 2 members of that camp.
So then Jungle Boy got on the microphone, and through his nose, he whined out, I want Big Bill. Now, apparently W. Morrissey, who used to be Big Cass, not to be confused with the plump singer in the Mamas and the Papas.
Mama Cass.
But not Mama Cass. He used to be Big Cass.
Right.
Then he became W. Morrissey. Now he's Big Bill.
Big Bill.
Big Bill. Not even Big Bill Dromo. Just Big Bill. Sounds like Big Bill used to be alongside Dinty Moore on the beef stew commercials, didn't he?
Honestly, tell me, if you're a ring announcer, how do you announce him?
Big Bill.
Here is weighing 300 and something pounds from who knows where, Big Bill. Does it pass the name test? Does it pass the name test?
No, it doesn't pass any kind of test. Name test, sniff test, smell test, pap test. So Jungle Boy whined out Big Bill, but here came Stokely Hathaway instead. And for 30 seconds of the show as a segment, it suddenly got interesting. When he came out, he said, you have pissed me off to the height of pistivity. But then Stokely talks to distract Jungle Boy because here comes Lee Moriarty. At least he doesn't have green hair anymore. So they realized that looked ridiculous. But here comes Moriarty and Big Bill, and they jumped Jungle Boy and got some sloppy heat on him, and the fans didn't give a shit. And it just continued. There was no referees coming. There was no bell ringing. They choke slammed him, did all this shit. And suddenly, music plays. And here comes, remember we've been saying, where's he? Here comes Hook. They sent Hook. And Hook, I guess you could term it, he walked purposely to the ring. And all 3 heels, including 7 foot of Big Bill, bailed out of the ring like live fucking strychnine was coming into the ring. Fucking radioactive waste, poisonous disease. They just all jumped out. Hook's wearing a hoodie and sweatpants. He never even went for anybody. He didn't have anything. I don't think he took his hands out of his pockets. He didn't swing anything. And all the heels just jump away. Jump away. And then Hook helps Jungle Boy up, and they stare at each other, and they shake hands. And we like Hook. He's got a different style. He looks like he's in shape. He took his shit seriously. He's got the brooding... What'd you call Darby? An emancipated skateboarder? He's got the brooding, troubled youth look. I don't know what that says about Taz's parenting skills, but why would these heels run from one guy that wasn't even particularly being menacing? But now apparently now we know Hook and Jungle Boy are both baby faces and have a mutual respect for each other.
Unless Hook secretly signed a deal already with Stokely. That's why no one made contact with him, and he's trying to lure Jungle Boy in because he fell for this the last time when Christian Cage did it.
Do you think Hook has done an interview, or Jungle Boy's done an interview with Tony Schiavone where he says, if anything happens to him, show this in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because if I team up with Hook, there's a possibility he'll stab me in the back. All right.
Hey, you know what? We don't know really what he could do in the ring or what he'll ever be able to do in the ring. He's been there a while now, and he barely wrestles. We don't know what's going on, but the fans are still super into him. He's got a mystique. At some point in the next year, is it crazy to think about the idea of MJF versus Hook? If they don't mess him up?
No, it's not, because from what I've seen, everybody on this roster would benefit from having a match with MJF just so that he can use his mind to concoct something that they look like they know what they're doing in, and that it makes sense. As we're going to see, he has replaced, MJF has CM Punk in the one segment of this program where you actually see a wrestling match that makes logical sense and you know who the babyface and heel is. So I think MJF against anybody that's willing to close their mouth and open their ears and let him figure out a way to make it work would be of help to this program. So then we had the Blackpool Combat Club, the BBC. I just say that, you know, it's actually BCC, but the first thing I think, of course, as everybody does, is BBC, because of the British Broadcasting Corporation. But we had all three of the BBCs back there, Moxley and Claudio and Useless.
BCC, Blackpool Combat Club.
Yeah, that's what I said. And there's more Moxley, blah, blah, and Useless looks out of place in this group. It's so forced. And Moxley is going to stomp Sammy Guevara into a bloody mess and leave him for dead on Friday. It seems like, if that was a quote, seems like if they're going to stomp somebody into a bloody mess and leave them in a ditch for dead, they'd at least do it on the higher rated program. It might get more talk.
The babyface is always threatening to murder and kill people, and he never does. And he never, ever does.
No, but there's been not one fatality, ladies and gentlemen, against Jon Moxley.
I thought Moxley was okay in this promo up until that last line. I thought Claudio was pretty good, too, and Claudio was more than most times imposing in the background behind Moxley while he was doing this. Yuta is completely out of place.
Well, you know, now that you brought it up, I can't fucking not see it. He looks just like that fucking superhuman goof on Twitter. I know.
It ruined him for me completely.
Ruined him. It ruined him.
That's right.
Wrecked him. Hell, it almost killed him.
Fuck this shit.
Yeah, well. And speaking of FTS, ladies, not FTW, but FTS, the next match, if you can call it that, was the House of Black versus Solo, Comodato, and Old Dan Tucker. With QT Marshall in the corner. Old Dan, to get out the way for Old Dan Tucker. He's too late to have his supper. Supper's over and dinner's cooking. Old Dan Tucker just stands there looking.
That was the guy in the Sting mask.
Yeah.
When they debuted Jeff Jarrett.
Yes. Well, now he's with Solo and Comodato. And with Q-Tip. And who are the baby faces? Who are the heels? What the fuck? You've got the Satan worshiping people in the House of Black, and you've got the QTs, pricks and assholes that have been heels since the start of this program. But it doesn't matter anyway, because they didn't have a match. Because they all get in the ring, and Julia blows mist on Comodato. Kind of, it wasn't black mist. I didn't see it. I saw it looked like she spit fucking Sprite in his face. And then the House of Black jumps the other guys and have a big 6-way on the floor and failed to break a table when they threw some guy on top of another guy on his fucking head on the table. And then they rang the bell for the match. And at that point, Malachi Black hits QT Marshall with his kick. And 1, 2, 3, and they ring the bell to end the match in 5 seconds. And then, okay, if the House of Black are heels, then how did they get anybody mad at them when they just beat up and humiliated other heels? And if they're supposed to get over on their wrestling, how did they do that when they didn't do any of it? And if they're supposed to get over as badasses, well, they did the same shit that everybody else does on every other segment of this program. They took guys out on the floor and rattled them around, not for as long as most, and they couldn't even figure out how to break this table with two guys on it. So how did this work in any way?
First of all, let me ask you a question I had at the very beginning when I saw what was going on. I like the new Nick Camarado gimmick of, I guess he's Razor Ramon. I don't know why he had a toothpick. But who did Nick Camarado piss off at some point in the last few years? Because why does a guy that looks like that, or is he an idiot? Because why does a guy that looks like that get stuck in QT's group, never get used, and when he does, he gets used like a goof?
You may have answered your own question. There's no other reason than he must be a complete mental incompetent. Because with that body, that look, that you can't tell me in 3 years they haven't taught him anything, where they can't let him out loose by himself around the neighborhood to wrestle. But you never see that. And then he's hidden in multi-man shit that doesn't go long. So he's either... And we've seen him before where he didn't look like he was the complete shits. So he must be a mental incompetent, or he's just not friends with any of the EVPs.
Well, speaking of friends with the EVPs, I think that's what we're going to get. House of Black versus the Elite coming up pretty soon.
Oh, good Lord. And then you've got heels who don't know how to be heels against people who allegedly are heels but are actually the baby faces because they're the EVPs and they don't want to have heat. Well, and then we got to the part of the program where a lot of the girls did bad promos about each other. I won't go through all the details. And then, you know what? This segment, it's gotten a lot of people's attention. A lot of people look at it superficially, and that's the way that the head superficial in charge wants them to look at it. Probably most people haven't delved a little deeper. We might go a little deeper. We might go all the way to the bone on this one. Chris Jericho versus the incomparable Action Andretti. So they do the deal where Chris Jericho says, I've lost to Claudio Castagnoli on a show, by the way, that nobody saw in the overall scheme of things, a Ring of Honor pay-per-view on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. That's where he did the job. And we brought that up. But now he says he's going to take out his aggravation in a tune-up match on a job guy, on a jobber. Now, we know that Chris Jericho wants to be the center of attention, right? And we know that Chris Jericho got 8 weeks of getting main events or feature matches against all kinds of alleged top guys, former Ring of Honor champions, where he got to win. And then we took him to task for losing on a show that nobody saw. So he doesn't want people to say that he's selfish or he doesn't want to do jobs. So he comes up with a brilliant idea. And by the way, it's not me saying this, but apparently it's already out on the internet that Jericho said he picked Action Andretti. This is his guy. He's seen this guy and said, oh my God, a star of the future.
Well, he can't wait to do something to talk about what he was doing.
He can't wait to do something and then talk about how good it was of him to do it. But he has a match with Action Andretti, and at first he's beating him up. And in Action gets a little offense, and he shuts him back down. And then, I'm not going to analyze the whole thing before I give you the framework. He even kicks out of Jericho's finish, the code breaker, going to a break, and gets the people chanting, let's go jobber. And then he puts him over. And a lot of people are going, well, this proves it, right? That Jericho's, he's a company man. He's for the team. Okay, let me explain, and then we'll talk about a couple of details in this. Instead of putting over a guy with potential to draw money in the top matches, whether it be We've talked about before, Starks is working with MJF. Okay, now what about Hobbs? Or what about any other of a number of people? We said, well, so-and-so with the right. Or if this was another company, you would pick a Braun Breaker or an Austin Theory. Somebody that you can see in the main events, drawing money, in the mix with the top talent down the road. This would be a shock way to introduce a guy like that. But instead, Jericho works it where he handpicks one of Santa's elves that nobody's ever heard of before. He works a match where he takes him lightly and then gets surprised by the guy and gets beat. And now everybody's talking about Chris Jericho and what a pro he is for doing this for this kid. Action Andretti's got a contract already. He's been announced as All Elite. But here's the thing. It was a great thing to get attention for Chris Jericho. It was a great 2 segments of television. The live crowd was going crazy, as they do whenever they see a chance for an unknown guy or an underneath guy or a underdog type of guy to beat up the pompous heel or to make him slip on a banana peel. People love that in any building, in any environment. So that part of it's going to get over. But there's a difference between bringing somebody in with the thought to immediately putting them on the main roster with a push and getting them over for the future, a top talent. There's a difference between doing it with that guy and doing it with a guy that's shorter than referee Aubrey. He can't weigh 185 pounds. Jericho's 5'10", had 3 or 4 inches on him. Can he talk? We don't know. We've never heard it. Can he sell? He got beat up some, but I didn't see any Ricky Morton level selling with the facials and the pain and or a steamboat type of thing. The kid's athletic. He did some flips. He didn't do them all well. Not only one reason probably was because he was nervous, but another reason is because Jericho was trying to do the flips with him to let him do his flips. And Jericho's 52 years old. Go back and watch Storm and Jericho when they were in their 20s and early 30s. They were gazelles. They could jump and they could fly and they had balance. Storm was better than Chris. But in its father time, it's not a goddamn shortcoming of his, but he couldn't flip, flop, and fly with all this guy's spinning shit like he could have 30 years ago, and he was trying. But the kid, he can do the same kind of stuff that every other guy on this fucking show can do. There was nothing to indicate that he's a main event talent that's being earmarked for a rocket push up the charts, so it wasn't that. He's a good athlete. He's small. He has probably limited experience. He's got limited upside right now and for the next several years. And unless he's still growing, probably for the rest of his life. But Jericho did this for attention. And he picked this kid because it would get over with the flippy fans, which is the ones that are more likely to fall for this because they have the most superficial knowledge of wrestling psychology. He picked the kid because they wouldn't take it seriously that Jericho got beat like if he did the same thing with Starks or Hobbs or Theory or Breaker or a legitimate upcoming talent. This kid's not even ready to be Daniel Garcia. But it got a lot of attention on Chris Jericho. And they basically, after he started surprising Jericho with all these things at the end, overlooking the fact that he'd already taken Jericho's finish, had the shit kicked out of him, but at the end he's 100%. They went for a spinning something that Jericho was supposed to catch him and do something, and it didn't work out, and Jericho went over on his head. And Action Andretti hit a running standing moonsault. 1, 2, 3. So the thing is, they didn't make a new star here. They got a great couple of segments in the building, And the attention goes to Jericho, both on camera as relates to the storyline of him being flummoxed over his loss and lost again. And the attention goes to him on the internet because he was so charitable in finding this upcoming superstar and putting him over. But he put him over specifically because if he put this kid over, he'd have all the attention. Whereas if he put a real contender to be a main event player over at this stage of the game, that guy would get the attention. Have I articulated this to where you think most people have understood the underhanded nature of this swerve?
I guess so. I think so. I will say I enjoyed it, even though it went a little long. It was nice to see something like this on the show because the crowd was so into it. Naturally, and I'm sure you've seen this, and maybe I guess you addressed a lot of this, but just to compare contrast, the one example most people are pointing to because of how big it was and it was seconds and people still remember it.
Sean Waltman, before he was the 1-2-3 Kid against Razor Ramon on Raw. Well, and I think we've talked about this here the past couple of months, not with this context of this happening, but they used Sean, I'm going to say a time or two before that as a job guy. So people had seen him, but at the same time, they had no idea this was going to happen. But the plan was from the start, the reason for it to happen, the reason for Sean Waltman to beat Razor Ramon and to become the 1-2-3 Kid was because they intended to start using him full-time on the main roster as the underdog, feisty young babyface kid, because they saw that in him and they saw that he was going to progress. And that's what he didn't. Are you mean to tell me? And now here's the thing. I don't know which one I want. Okay, if Action Andretti was going to be on TV nearly every week for the next however long and start getting a push and start winning matches and being used as a main roster talent, then maybe that was a plan and that this wasn't just a waste to get attention on Jericho. But then if they did that, it would mean we'd have to watch fucking Action Andretti every week. Because I remind you, Sean Waltman was painfully thin in those days, but he's 6 feet tall.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you because there's a reason why Jericho ran the next day to tell everyone the story about how he had picked this kid and decided to do this. Whether or not it helps Action Andretti, who we've only seen this one time, apparently he was on YouTube a few times a while back. From what we've seen, we really can't judge him too much, but Jericho absolutely did this so people could not say that he doesn't put anyone over. Look, I'll take anyone. I'm going to pick anyone here. I'll take him. And I'll put him over. I'll make him a star. That's what this is.
Well, and again, as I said, Sean Waltman was 6 feet tall. And yes, he was thin, but that was part of it. But he also, that was 1990, was it 4?
93.
3. Okay, he'd been in the business for, 5-6 years at that point at least. He started in Minneapolis. He and Jerry Lynn had that program for the independent promotion up there in the Twin Cities and had gotten some attention on an underground, on the sheet readers level. But he knew how to sell, and he had a unique style, and he had some oomph and some charisma as that underdog kid. And then he got older and grew up, got a little bigger, got a little tougher, and he was a heel and a blah, blah, blah. But there was something to him. There was a plan in place. It wasn't done for a shocking moment. It was done for a shocking moment to introduce a new full-time guy. And that does not compare to what happened here. And also, like I said, and he may be a good kid. I don't know how old he is. Like I said, he's probably not going to get a lot bigger. But right now, you could just tell he's doing the same shit that everybody else does in independent matches, running up and down the ropes and flipping and things, but he's not ready to even be Daniel Garcia in this environment. He's in way over his head. We'll probably never see him again on Dynamite. He'll probably be on Dark or Elevation now that he's signed.
Oh, no.
They got to do something with him.
No, I think they're going to have to use him on Dynamite for a while. Otherwise, it will be apparent what this is.
Well, then if they use him on Dynamite, it needs to be for Jericho to somehow obliterate him or throw Agent Orange or napalm on him or something, and then some higher level babyface come to the rescue to get in a program with Jericho, because possibly Claudio or somebody, whatever the fuck, because we don't need to be seeing, this kid does not need to be seen being put over or just working every week on television. At this stage of his game, they will be convinced for the rest of their life that that's him, and he's too green for that. Because there was, I mean, they've got guys that can do these flips better. So find somebody that brings something different and special. Charisma, personality, toughness, balls, seriousness. We got enough acrobats and cheerleaders. They all just blend in. Anyway, so then Starks was in the back with a blistering promo on MJF of his own, and he fucking hung. He's got emotion and passion and delivery, and the verbiage was good, except that he promised he was going to be the AEW champion. And that's a no-no. Aspiring baby faces never promise you're going to win the big match or the big title, the big belt, whatever, unless you're going to. You can mitigate it in ways that they'll never even notice. You can say, I'm going to prove I'm the man. I'm going to prove I'm the toughest. I'm going to prove I'm the best. I'm going to waltz you across Texas. I'm going to fucking give it my all. You'll have to kill me to beat anything. But I swear to you, I'm going to be the champion. If you're not going to be the champion, you're a baby face. You've just fucked up. But otherwise than that, you can tell that Starks, he's in like the FTR and the Briscoes match. He's like doing everything he can to prove that they have been idiots for not featuring him before now, and to give everybody a reason to pay attention to him, listen to what he says, follow this motherfuckers, whatever. And the promo that you can tell he came up with on his own was better than anything that anybody in the WWF has written for fucking months. Just because he sounded like he meant it. And then we got the package on FTR and the Guns where the Briscoes were actually seen momentarily, but their names were never mentioned. It was like, here we are having this double dog collar chain match with two people that have never been on the television before, and we can't mention their names, but these other guys came in and fucked shit up for us afterwards. And that was FTR's contribution to the program. By the way, the EVP's 25 minutes, FTR 25 seconds. Did you enjoy Ty Mello-Conti versus Ruby Soho, young Brian Last?
I watched it, and I wanted to enjoy it, and I was fascinated by it, and I watched it. Did that answer?
I believe you mentioned that.
Did any of that answer what you asked?
No, again, this was a grudge match, like they all are, so they did the deal where they fought on the floor forever before the quote-unquote match starts. When did they start doing that? When did they start doing that, where they can fight for 15 minutes all over the arena and the referee will just stand there, but once that they decide to get in the ring, then the referee will take 5 seconds, say, oh, yeah, everybody okay? Okay, ring the bell. When did that start? When did it become a thing?
I'm not sure. Did they do that with Brett versus Austin?
I don't remember it. But if they did, and I because it would only have happened maybe that once, like ever, maybe that's why it didn't slap me in the face, but 3 times on the same program every week, it's starting to get old again, too. And it used, when the heels jump-started the babyface, the referee is like, oh, shit, ring the bell, the match is going. And then your match is going. But when you're just having a fucking fight around the ring and the match is not even happening, it's just... Having said that, I thought this was a better fight than most of the AEW girls matches. They were serious. They were laying shit in. Let's face it, there's no goddamn steamboats here as far as in-ring work, but they were trying. They kept it going. They didn't seem to get too lost. And I've got to say, again, that Ty Meloconti has the best facials in the wrestling business. Bitch face, shock face, whatever face. She's got some charisma. But then finally Ruby hit her finish 1, 2, 3. And then Anna Jay came in and the heels beat the baby face up and left her laying like every other match on every other show. You watched it. What else did you get out of it?
That's about it.
All right. So then we had Adam Page in the back with Officer Barbrady talking about his concussion. And, I have to say, even if Page doesn't have any personality and he's blasé with his delivery of his promos, there was good material in this one because he was talking about his concussion. He's sitting there and he's saying, when I took a nap on the mat, I came to, they're asking me questions. I knew most of them. I knew what date it was. I knew what town I was in, whatever. But then they showed me the picture of my son. And he looked up at me with his green eyes and I couldn't remember his name. That's a good concussion promo. The problem was this fat, fucking, goofy-looking outlaw piece of shit. Pizzeria Uno from the Dork Order was standing back there in a flannel shirt and a windbreaker and a fucking cross between a gimp mask and a fucking shark mask, shaking his head, holding his face, and acting dramatic over what Page was saying, which killed the whole goddamn thing. And the only reason he was there is because Moxley had said earlier, Page, you and your Dork Order buddies, you know where to find me. So they had this fat fucking potato-headed idiot standing there looking like a goof to illustrate that Page is still with the Dork Order, the biggest bunch of jack-off morons that have ever been presented on national wrestling television. So at the same time that Page actually put forth the effort to do something halfway decent, they got this idiot in the back killing the whole thing, and they're still telling the fans that he's associated with the stupidest, most underneath, ineffectual, limp-dicked job guys that have ever been foisted off on a fucking unsuspecting public. So I didn't like that interview. What'd you think?
It was all right for what it was. I'm not a big fan of Adam Page's promos, but for him having an explanation, like you said, it was fine. And I'm not a fan of Pizzeria Uno, but it certainly didn't bother me to the extent it bothered you.
Did you see him just... he couldn't make faces because he has a mask on, but he was doing the pantomime equivalent of pulling goofy faces. Then Dustin Rhodes was reduced to doing a promo with the Puddin' Gang, Pockets, and Danhausen. No wonder he wants to retire. And then we got to the main event for not only the AEW title, but also the Dynamite Diamond Ring. And they've been plugging this match, MJF and Ricky Starks. And you could tell that MJF didn't have as much riding on this as Starks because MJF is already the champion. He's a lot more, I think we can say, established. He's a lot more confident. He knows what the fuck he can do. And I think Starks was a little amped up here, a little excited, sort of like when we worked with the Road Warriors in their gimmick hometown of Chicago. They came out, they had goosebumps. It was a little rough for the first couple seconds. Starks kind of botched the first spot. And I started getting worried, but MJF knocked him over on his own clothesline, backed up, danced a little bit, started again, didn't get in a rush, and they got in a groove. And I was thinking at this point, where and when would MJF and Ricky Starks have worked with each other? Where would they have last time, if ever? Probably MLW, maybe. Would they have ever been in the same ring with each other? Can't think of it.
I don't have an answer for you. I'm assuming somewhere on the independents, but who knows if they even have.
But somewhere on the independents would have been a few years ago.
It would have been at least 3.5, 4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that's pressure for the first time you ever work with a guy in the main event for the world title on national television. This was good. Even if Starks bobbled a thing or two, that's what they need to do is they need to have more matches. Starks needs to have more matches like this. A lot of the guys need to have more matches with a guy that understands what the business is and can put the heel that can call it and put a match together to showcase that individual's shit rather than just trying to do everything that all the other guys do, same way, same how. So that's why I said earlier MJF has taken the Punk spot where he has the wrestling match on the show with no funny shit. It makes sense. You know who the heel is, who the babyface is. The referee doesn't get buried. There's a story. People are actually trying to win stuff, not do fancy fake shit. They don't go too fast so that you understand things. They don't run off and leave you. It's not just meaningless car wrecks and highlight clips. At one point, MJF worked the abdominal stretch and did the thing where he leaned back Dennis Condrey and pulled on the rope for extra leverage. And the referee came around and caught it and kicked his arm off, and Starks hip tossed him out of an abdominal stretch, and the fans popped for it. Imagine that. Because it's wrestling, and it makes sense. So, again, Starks had one more bobble on a power bomb, but he recovered and he hit it, and it looked like MJF was trying to fight out anyway. But they were getting this is awesome chance for a wrestling match when a heel was getting heat. They chanted, this is awesome. They shouldn't, but they never see it anymore, so it's novel. And MJF, they finally get into a fucking hockey fight at the end, and they're both throwing them. And MJF wins the hockey fight exchange with a thumb to the eye, and the people go, ooh! This would have been the point in everybody else's match where they'd all been doing dives over the top rope, standing there like slack-jawed morons waiting to catch some 200-pound imbecile coming off the roof on them. Obviously cooperating with each other, holding hands, doing dance routines, and or breaking furniture. These guys are getting this is awesome for thumbs to the eye. Because the people gave a shit. Not only about one guy, but about both guys. They wanted to see Starks win as much as they wanted to see MJF lose. And then MJF gets the armbar. Starks fights for the ropes, tries to reach the ropes. MJF traps his other arm. Starks is reaching with a one leg to put the foot on the ropes. MJF traps that. And then Starks gets the rope with the other leg, and the rope break got an ovation. Because that's the rules of the wrestling match. They got as big a pop with a goddamn rope break as these other morons get when they try to paralyze themselves and gives themselves a neck fusion, getting choke slammed through tables. And then they went back and forth until MJF hid behind the referee. And when Starks jerked the referee away so that he could get to MJF football kicked him in the balls and small packaged him. 1, 2, 3. Perfect finish. The heel cheated. The referee didn't see it. They built up with the back and forths to a peak with the ball shot, and then the heel capitalized on it. They didn't just do a flat finish out of nowhere when they ran out of other shit to do. So that was a main event wrestling match. If they had more of those and people could count on that they would see them, I don't know what these ratings do. You can tell me it did. You can tell me in a minute, but they might be able to keep their audience more often if they got a diet of these matches where people would understand, hey, yeah, we can kind of suspect at the end of the show something's going to be good. I don't know whether they suspect that yet or not, but... And by the way, after MJF won, Danielson ran out and chased him out of the arena. Talk to me about this match, Brian.
There's not much more to add to it. It was a really good match, and like you said, it was a different kind of match. It was almost what you would have seen on TBS 35 years ago. That kind of match, and it got the fans into it. It was a hot crowd all night. They were into just about everything, except for the stuff they weren't. And they really liked this, and they were really into it, and MJF has been great, and you rarely get to see him wrestle, so it's always a big deal. I think if I had any complaint at all, really, it's that it didn't appear on its face to be the start of anything. It just seemed to be a transition to get MJF to Danielson here.
Yeah.
And that may hurt Ricky Starks more than not doing this at all.
Yeah, because I know they want to point to Danielson probably for the next pay-per-view, but this cannot be Ricky Starks' final word on a subject.
He's been great. He's been fantastic, and he's won over the fans completely. Yeah,
and he has to have some type of comeback on MJF. He has to have more to say. This is not over. If it is over, it's because, I've talked about before, you always need, if a babyface isn't going to win a belt, he needs a graceful way out and then a branch to go off with somebody else. And this right here was just, you want to see Starks get even. You want to see Starks and MJF again. You didn't come out with the feeling that anything's been settled. So if Starks doesn't get another opportunity or more opportunities to talk with, interact with, be opposite MJF in some kind of way, even if it's helping facilitate the transition to Danielson, it's just going to leave him, as Adrian Street used to say, like a spare prick at the wedding. And what were the ratings? Do you have that information?
Well, just one more thing. What were your thoughts on the post-match with Danielson?
Well, he came out, chased him down the ramp, chased him into the ring, and my DVR froze. So what the fuck happened?
That was really
anything
it.
else? That was it?
That was kind of it.
Well, then we know that everybody's got good cardio and they can still run after having a 20-minute match.
AEW Dynamite, Jim, this past week did 950,000 viewers.
So that is way up from last week, correct? All the big matches they got, the best of 7, the title match for the Diamond Ring, all that other stuff. So how did they start and how did they progress?
The show began with Death Triangle versus the Elite Match 4, 1,044,000 viewers.
Okay.
Segment 2, quarter 2, Kenny Omega's promo, as well as MJF's promo, and of course the end of the match was what began this segment, 997,000 viewers.
So when they saw the best of 7 match come up, in the first 15 minutes, they lost 47,000 people.
Segment 3, which is the Acclaim being attacked by Jay Lethal, Jeff Jarrett, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh, otherwise known as Team TNA, as well as the Jericho Association, the Jericho Appreciation, excuse me, that's what it is. The Jericho Appreciation
Association
Society.
of Appreciation.
That promo and Jungle Boy versus Brian Cage, 968,000 viewers.
So they lost another 29,000.
Segment 4, the fourth quarter, which is the end of the Brian Cage versus Jungle Boy, and of course Big Bill segment, and the return of Hook, the Blackpool Combat Club's promo, a Swerve Strickland video, and the House of Black versus the Factory, 926,000 viewers.
Jesus Christ. And by the way, I forgot about Swerve because since it was a video, I kind of got all the way through it before I realized that it was wrestling. And but they lost another.
Yeah.
They lost another 42,000 there. So they have in the first hour, they lost 118,000 people.
Well, the 9 o'clock.
They need to pick some back up or elsewise their overall math is wrong.
Well, here we are, the 9 o'clock hour. Chris Jericho versus Action Andretti. There's now 2 wrestlers in AEW who have wrestled in the last year with the first name of Action. How about that? Action Andretti versus Chris Jericho, 981,000 viewers.
Ah, so The EVPs put themselves at the top of the program to get the Big Bang viewers, and Jericho put himself at the top of the 9 o'clock hour to get the switchers overs, because you can't tell me that they said, oh, Chris Jericho versus Action Andretti is going to bring 55,000 people back on the face of it. And they didn't know it was anything but a squash match. So that's the top of the hour, tuning in from something else they were tuning out.
Whether it's Chris Jericho or the Elite, whoever gets themselves booked on that show before the women's segment is the smart one.
Yep.
The next segment, which would be 9:15, segment 6, which is Ty Mello versus Ruby Soho, as well as a Ricky Starks promo, 903,000 viewers.
Oh! So they lost 78. They had picked up 55,000 at the top of the hour, and after that 15 minutes, they lost 78,000.
Finally, the last two segments on the show, which included the end of the previous match and Anna Jay's run-in and attack of Ruby Soho, the Adam Page promo, the Best Friends, Dustin Rhodes, and Orange Cassidy's promo, and the beginning of MJF versus Ricky Starks.
So basically what you're saying is after they've trotted out every embarrassment in the company, the fucking multiple fucking girls promos, the pudding gangs out there, the whole 9 yards, then they get the champ in the ring. Go ahead.
913,000 viewers. And the final quarter...
So wait a minute. So they gained 10,000 back through all of that on the hopes that they might see MJF. Go ahead.
And the final quarter of the show, MJF versus Ricky Starks and Bryan Danielson's run-in at the very, very, very end, 891,000.
And then there went 22,000 more.
Every week
they'll blame MJF now.
Every week now, and we keep pointing it out. It's hard to deny. It's the women's segment that drives off the most viewers. And the question has to be asked, are the male fans that come in because of the female wrestling matches and the female wrestlers worth the male fans you're losing because of those segments?
So they have almost 1 million people at the top of the hour and give them such dreck for a 20-25 minute period before that main event that they run off almost 100,000 of them. All righty then.
Who do you think is going to open up Dynamite this coming week? Will it be Jericho to address losing to Action Andretti, or will it be MJF? I think those are the two best options. Not the two best options. Those are the two most likely
The two most likely. I think the EVPs have got a taste of having 1 million people watch them for the first time ever, and you're going to have to blast them out of that first segment with Dynamite. No pun intended.
All kidding. I'm not even kidding at all, but I've been saying this for weeks now about the women's segments and what they're doing. If you're an AEW wrestler, again, I don't care who you are you fighting with Tony? Don't put me on after that segment. No one's going to see this or it's going to drive people away. And again, if we're talking about Raw and the ratings keep going down and down and down, we could joke and say it's Gargano. I think a lot of people just aren't interested in Johnny Gargano, of course. But there's never been more women's wrestling on that show. And again, there are wrestling fans who like women's wrestling just as much as men's wrestling, and they'll support it.
But not a lot of them.
But again, how many fans are the opposite, who they don't want that on the show, and that's when they'll turn the channel, and they may not come back.
And you know what? The WWE shows are even worse than the AEW shows in that they're 50-50 men and women. At least AEW hasn't done that yet. Well, they've got enough ratings killers on the men's side. But trying to watch Raw and every other match is more girls and more girls. The top girls are an attraction and they stand out if it's not done and overdone like everything else. And once you've got to 50-50, girl wrestling is way fucking overdone. And, and we're seeing the result of that too.
And that's the thing. It's not just us saying our opinion now. We've been doing these ratings and these reviews, not the reviews, but the ratings and breaking down the quarter hours for months now. It's the same segment every single show. You could bank on it. No matter what's on AEW, you know what segment is going to drive people away. You know when Tony's going to put the female segment. It's almost in the same spot every show, and it kills the audience every show.
Well, I think they need to start out with the main event and work backwards. And at least that way they'd get the viewership probably for everything that they, because I think at this point, even a good main event is not going to keep or add to the viewers on this program. They're going to start with as many as they're ever going to get, no matter what they do, because wrestling as a whole, and this company in particular, is not as popular as a years-old sitcom rerun.
If you're Tony Khan and you are not going to give up on your women's division, and you're going to give them the exact same amount of time they're getting now, if not more in the future, is it worth investing in Sasha Banks?
Oh, not if she wants that much money.
If she's the only one out of everyone they have there who's ever shown she could actually get people to tune in just to see her. Remember when NXT beat AEW early on? It was when Sasha Banks was in the main event.
But Tony has already, he has already spent his inheritance. He's already spent his
No, he hasn't.
Money.
No, he hasn't.
Hey, add up the long-term contracts he's signing that these suckers are getting him for after the Punk debacle, and he's trying to rally his troops. Chris Jericho will be there till he's 62. Moxley's there with his wife and probably kids and dog for years and years. If Sasha Banks wants that much money, then let her go to New Japan to get it. If I was Tony, I'd sign Mandy Rose and let her do whatever she wants outside of one day a week, come here and be on my TV show.
But the problem is, a Mandy Rose will continue what's happening right now, which is less people tuning in, less people caring about the women's division and the wrestlers in it.
Well,
Sasha Banks would actually cause people to want to see it.
And who's she going to work with?
That's a whole nother problem, and it's AEW. She could do promos on TV for like 6 months, and then you put her and Britain on TV or something.
Hey, here's the thing. They want to see everybody that comes into AEW from the WWE for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then once they see what they're going to be doing and how they're featured, they don't want to see them anymore. So, no, I'd get Mandy Rose at a discount instead of Sasha Banks at a premium, because it ain't going to make any difference anyway.
Mandy Rose is going to need a new name.
Well, and what her name on her gimmick is Mandy Sachs.
Well, that is an interesting pick, an interesting option for her new name.
What is her name anyway? Does she have a real name? Did her parents give her a name when she was born?
I don't know. Hold on. I've never cared, so I've never looked. Let me
Mandy
see.
S-A-C-S. Mandy Sachs.
I know Johnny Sachs, but Mandy, her real name is Amanda Rose Sacomano. So there you go.
Well, she doesn't need to use that one either. Mandy Rose is, that's pretty close. Amanda Rose.
Amanda Rose. She can actually still use it. Or Rose Sacomano.
I don't know about that.
It's Rose Sacomano.
How about Bob Sacramento?
That's Bob Sacomano. Not Sacramento.
Well, but he's from Sacramento.